Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, another tough one for the Guardians in Boston on Tuesday night. It really was one of those Fenway Park games. Wild swings and back and forth, momentum changes. The Guardians looked like they were in good shape after hitting 3 home runs in an inning and taking a 7-5 lead. But then, Slade Ciccone went back out for the 6th inning, and things didn't go so well.
Yeah, Joe. It was kind of an interesting decision by Stephen Vogt to send Ciccone out for the 6th inning. He had only thrown 80 pitches, but he'd also given up, he'd given up 5 runs on 8 hits, at least 8 hits, 9 hits maybe. He had struck out 8 guys, didn't walk a batter. Vogt said his stuff was still very good, and they needed to get a couple more outs from him to protect the bullpen. He retires the first guy, but then gives up a double to Yoshida, and then Rafaela, hit one over the monster and out of the ballpark to tie the game just after they had taken a 7-5 lead with the 6-run 5th inning. Just a momentum killer. Joe really took them out of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he was asked about the decision. What do you think goes into that? He factors into the decision to send Ciccone back out there.
Yeah, I think he's looking to protect the bullpen. They've used the bullpen a lot. They would have loved for Ciccone to maybe get through the 6th. He only ended up throwing 82 pitches for the game. Struck out 8 guys, like I said before. So his stuff was very good. He just kept getting hit, Joe. I mean, he gave up a career high 11 hits, and I don't know. I mean, I guess you've got to make a call there. It was a tough choice, and it didn't work. I mean, and then it's tied up, and then you've got to go to your main guys in the bullpen, and that they hung in there for a while, but then the 8th inning rolled around, and it was curtains.
Yeah, we'll get to Cade Smith here in a minute. I just want to one more thing about Ciccone. Like you said, the stuff was good. The pitch count was low. There was really no reason not to send him back out there to try and finish the 6th. But you look at a hot team in Boston, home run hitting team in Boston, a home run park in Fenway, and Slade Ciccone, since he was activated and joined the Guardians rotation, his 22 home runs allowed are the most in the American League. He's nobody in the American League has given up more home runs than Slade Ciccone. This is a real problem for him, is keeping the ball in the yard.
Yeah, especially at a ballpark like Fenway. And Joe, I mean, he in the 2nd inning, he gives up 4 runs and 6 hits. Now they all weren't rockets, but that's a lot of pitches right there. And he just got kind of worked over to me. 11 hits, 7 runs. We've seen this before from him where, kind of, I guess if you look under the hood, the numbers, the strikeouts and the pitch count looks good, but the numbers that stare you in the face, 7 runs, 11 hits, 5 in the 3rd innings, that's not going to get it done.
And we've seen Slade Ciccone get hot, go on stretches where he pitches deep into games and looked good. There was a 4 or 5 start stretch there where he was, one of the reasons we were talking about this rotation being so solid for the Guardians, and now just sort of up and down since then. Career high in innings pitched this season for him, might have something to do with it. But the good thing about Slade Ciccone, and we've talked to him and we've seen him, after games and in the clubhouse, this is a very confident guy. This is a guy who won't be shaken, badly by, 1 or 2 bad outings like this. Just, what does this do to a guy's confidence when, he goes out there and they tell him, hey, get us 1 more inning, and he can't get through that 6th.
Yeah, I think he appreciates the chance to go out there. Obviously, every pitcher wants that chance. And you're right, Joe. This guy is confident. He was, he threw 77% of his pitches were strikes, and that's what he talked about after the game. He said he felt good, going out for the 6th. He just said, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth when your last pitch of the outing gets hit out of the yard. You don't execute that last pitch. But he felt, talking to Slade, it sounded like, he was satisfied with the outing and felt pretty good about it. And, and you're right, Joe. I think maybe the inning stuff is coming into play a little bit. He's topped 100 innings in the big league level for the first time. So, this is kind of growing pains that I think the Guardians are going to have to put up with not only from Ciccone, but a bunch of those guys in the rotation because that's a young rotation.
Yeah, and the learning sort of extends into the bullpen as well. You talk about leaving a sour taste in your mouth. Cade Smith comes out in, I believe it was the what was it the ninth inning
The
and
eighth inning, eighth inning.
eighth inning. Yes, eighth inning. He throws. He needs one out to get out of the eighth inning. Throws 11 pitches and doesn't retire a batter. This was probably as bad as we've seen Cade Smith in an outing this season, except for basically that first game where he came in after the Emmanuel Clase suspension, gave up a couple of home runs.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, the same thing happened to him in Texas too, if you remember. Seven
Yeah.
pitches and the game was over. So either he's tipping his pitches or he's throwing, he's become too predictable because the Red Sox jumped on him and Texas jumped on him in the same manner. They had the Red Sox had 4 hits in the blink of an eye in the eighth inning, and all of a sudden, a 7-7 game is 11-7 in Boston's favor, and they're playing dirty water in at Fenway Park.
Yeah, a couple of those hits. There's a bloop down the right field line. There's a perfectly placed ball behind the bag at third base that Jose can't make a throw on. A speedy runner there, and it's not like he was getting hit super hard. They were just finding the spots, and that was really the story of the game for Boston all night last night.
Yeah, they had some I don't know, Joe. They had some, they didn't exactly break the sound barrier with some of those hits, especially in the second inning. Navarez rolls a ball down the third baseline to keep that inning going. Rafaela, who had a great game, kind of punches one over Manzardo's head in the right field for 2 runs. They hit it hard and they hit him in the right spots. What did Wee Willie Keeler say? Hit them where they ain't. That's what they did last night.
Yeah, and that was, it really was the story of the game for Boston. Whereas the Guardians, they hit 3 home runs in one inning in the fifth, and it was a big momentum shift, a big momentum swing. You've got John Kenzie Noel basically redeeming himself with that pull. They're going to rename it John Kenzie's pull instead of Pesky's pull. On Monday he bounces a home run off the pull off of his glove. On Tuesday he wraps one around it. Just what was the reaction out of? Did you get a chance to talk to John Kenzie? What was the reaction out of him after the game? In terms of feeling any sort of redemption on that home run.
Yeah, I think maybe tonight, Joe, that the Pesky's pole is going to be wrapped in Christmas lights for big Christmas because I think he's owned that baby. But yeah, we talked to John Kenzie after the game, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Now that's a home run." Monday was not a home run, and when he got back to the dugout, all his teammates, that's what their teammates were telling him. That was a real home run. What happened to you Monday was not.
Well, the funny thing is, according to StatCast, that home run that happened on Monday off of Trevor Story's bat was a home run in 0 out of 30 parks. So, the StatCast can tell you based on launch angle and exit velocity and all that, but it can't apply it in the real world where the ball bounces off a defender's glove and hits the pole and it's automatically a home run. Yeah, 0 out of 30 parks is a stat that you can sort of make light of and all that in retrospect. No doubt about John Kenzie's home run. No doubt about Austin Hedges hitting a home run, and then Brian Rocchio blasting one. Rocchio's up to 27 RBIs since the break. He's leading the club in runs batted in since the All-Star break. Just they had their chances. They hit 3 home runs in an inning off of Garrett Crochet, one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, I mean that was an inning out of nowhere, Joe. When Hedges starts the inning with a line drive home run over the monster, something unusual is going to happen. Then Fry hits a 2-run homer, and then Rocchio just hammered the ball to over the monster as well. But he's had like you said, he's had a great second half. He looks confident. He's made some nice plays in center at shortstop. And I would imagine he'll probably move back over to second base tonight if Gabriel Arias is ready to play with that bruised right wrist.
Yeah, and we're sort of at the time in the season in September where you've got a couple extra guys on the bench. You've got the ability to maybe stash a guy who's day to day with a bruise like Arias has. Just sort of nice to see it. He'll be able to get back in. We've been talking about some of the injuries that have sort of plagued the Guardians this year. And one of the names that you mentioned was Lane Thomas, a guy who last night made a rehab start in Akron. He went 0 for 3 with a strikeout and 3 at bats with the Rubber Ducks, but he's going to play again today. And, there's a possibility that we might see Lane Thomas at some point during the final month of the season.
Yeah, Joe, he's supposed to play center field tonight for the Ducks. We'll see. He's been out so long, Joe. His last game was July 4th at the big league level. So he's been out so long that, are you good? How much, rehab time do you give the guy? I mean, he's going to have to be at least a week to 2 weeks, don't you think? So, and that doesn't leave much of the season to come back to and play for the Guardians. But Joe, this is a guy that I really think they missed more than a lot of the other injured players. We all remember what he did after the trade, after getting traded from Washington. He struggled. Then he, had a great September, 20 RBIs, 7 home runs. Had a big ALDS against the Tigers, and I think the Guardians really didn't do a whole lot in the offseason to help this offense. But they were counting on a full season from Lane Thomas. I think that had them excited. And unfortunately, he's only played 39 games because of injuries, and it started early. He got hit on the hand and on April 8th in the home opener against the White Sox, and it kind of snowballed from there. And but if you look at his numbers when he's healthy and he gives you an average 162 game season, this is a guy that hits 20 home runs, maybe drives in 50 to 70 RBIs, steals some base, hits 240 to 250. I think they could have used a guy like that.
Yeah, but what's the old adage? Lane Thomas has tremendous abilities. Run the bases, hit for average, hit for power. His abilities are undeniable, but the most important ability is availability. And he's not available. He's not on the field. Would that deter the Guardians from maybe trying to sign him to a deal in the offseason if he can come out the last 2 or 3 weeks of September and show what he's capable of?
Well, that's a great question, and I do not know. I think that's something they would have to give serious thought to. But like you said, the greatest predictor of injuries is past injuries, and I'm sure you don't want to go through another season like this. But Thomas has put up numbers in the past. He's a free agent. What is he, 30, 31? I think if you could get him on the right deal, you'd have to consider it.
Yeah, you'd have to definitely consider like a 1-year show me deal. And hey, 1-year deals are great for teams, especially like Cleveland, who, if things go south again at the trade deadline next year, you could flip him to a contender and maybe get a prospect out of it. So a lot of possibilities. That would be somebody I would maybe circle in pencil in the offseason as a potential to try and bring back, just because you were robbed of a full season of Lane Thomas, and you want to see if you can keep him healthy for 150 games or so and see what he's able to do. Other injuries to consider or to talk about at this point. You spoke to Chris Antonetti maybe about Chase DeLauder, or what's the latest that you've heard on him?
Yeah, they're kicking some ideas around to keep DeLauder in competition during the winter, and the thing they did last year is have him play a couple days a week in the Arizona Fall League, and then return to Goodyear, Arizona, and to continue to work on his body, his conditioning. They could do that again, Joe. That would be DeLauder's third season in the Arizona Fall League. He might have more at bats in the Arizona Fall League than he does in the Guardians minor league system.
Yeah, that's a funny way to look at it. But did they consider anything like winter ball in any other place to that's sort of a less controlled environment for
Yeah.
them? Might be a little more risky.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a factor. I didn't ask him about winter ball, but I think the way they've kind of taken care of DeLauder, I don't think they're letting him out of go to the Dominican or or Puerto Rico, unless they really had some of their coaches were down there. Maybe the manager was one of their coaches, something like that, where they could have a hands-on approach.
Yeah, wrap him in bubble wrap and send him down to Puerto Rico for a month or two in the winter and see if he can get the number of at bats that they want to see him get. But again, this is a guy who's proven at every step that he can hit with the best of them. So, sort of waiting on what we can see out of him. Of course, he's coming off that hamate bone surgery. about 6 to 8 weeks ago. Juan Brito, the latest on him, he's with the Clippers, the last I heard.
Yeah, he's with the Clippers. He left Arizona. He's done rehabbing. He's just trying to build the strength back up in his hamstring, the injured hamstring, and they hope he's back playing before the end of the AAA season.
Yeah, it's another sort of the same along the same lines as Lane Thomas with Juan Brito, just not really being able to see what they've got with him at the major league level or anywhere this year, just due to all the injuries. One of the topics we discussed in yesterday's podcast, 6-man rotation. And sort of spoke it into existence, I guess, talk about it enough. And Stephen Vogt confirming that they'll go with a 6-man rotation. They'll bring up Joey Cantillo for tonight's start. So that means somebody in the bullpen, is probably going to have to head out. But Cantillo will join the rotation. It'll be a 6-man rotation for at least the near future as they continue through these next 2 weeks of games. What are they saying about that and the ideas behind going to a 6-man rotation?
Well, I think they're trying to have it both ways, Joe. They say they're not going to a 6-man rotation because they're limiting the innings pitched on guys, but they're going to a 6-man rotation because they're going to limit the innings pitched for certain starters. I mean, guys like Gavin Williams and Ciccone have already passed their season highs in the big leagues. I think Logan Allen has done the same, very close to it. So they're keeping an eye on all those guys with the extra starter. Now this gives them time, the ability to do that. I'm unsure how they're going to keep everybody on regular rest. That's I don't think they'll be able to, but that they seem Vogt said he thought they could do that, keep everyone on about a 5-day schedule. And we'll have to see how it works. But they've got to do something to get through this stretch of 17 games in 17 days.
This is where they feed all the algorithms and everything into ChatGPT or they use AI to try and figure out a schedule where you can keep and maximize guys or minimize the amount of extended rest you have to give a pitcher in that rotation. I think there's definitely ways to do it. You throw up a calendar and you move guys around, and I trust in Carl Willis, who's been through things like this before, and that pitching team is going to put their heads together. I have no doubt about that. You talk about this 6-man rotation, the remainder of this stretch of games where they have like 14 more in a row, something along those lines. But the upcoming games against Tampa Bay, against Kansas City, you're talking about the teams that are in front of them right now in the wild card race. There's 3 teams ahead of them: Tampa Bay, Kansas City, and Texas, and that stand between them and Seattle, who's fading fast in the third wild card spot. The Mariners lost again, but that's a team with a stacked lineup. So you've got to figure that within the next month they're going to figure things out. They can. It's funny that they lose 2 in a row in Boston, 3 in a row now if you count Seattle on Sunday, and they're still not completely out of contention for this because of the teams that are in front of them that they play. They're 4 games back of the third wildcard spot. They're 9 games back of the division, but they played Detroit 6 times before the end of the season. Crazier things have happened than this team, sweeping Detroit in 6 games and clawing back in. You only need to go back to 2013, where that team went on a run and found themselves in the postseason. It sounds weird to say after blowing a game late again last night that this team is not completely out of it.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, I think the strength of that, when they went 23-13 over that stretch is still helping them. They're 22-20 since the All-Star break, but they've lost 12 of their last 17 games. This is such a weird team. It's really hard to figure. And you're right. They control their own destiny, especially in the wild card race. If they can, go down to Tampa Bay and, beat the Rays, which they did in Cleveland, and then go to Kansas City. I think they have a winning record against the Royals, or they're right around 500 against the Royals. Texas, of course, swept them, but there's a chance there. And, I think that's why, you could really, they can't kind of let their guard down. I mean, there is a chance. You want to play meaningful games in September, and they have a chance to do that.
Yeah, and it's going to start with obviously tonight in Boston, a tall order to take on the Red Sox and at least salvage one game in this series. But you've got four in Tampa, and that's the key there. A four-game series, with the way the schedule is nowadays, you don't see too many four-game series. You really have to take advantage of that and see what you can do in Tampa. Unfortunately, the Rays have started to heat up a little bit, and now they're going to be a tough out as the Guardians approach that series. All right, Owens, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We will check back in with you again on Friday after the opener of the Tampa series. We'll talk to you then.
Good deal.